Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. In this lesson, we will explore the life of Charlie Chaplin told in a way that's easy to understand and perfect for practicing your English listening skills. Let's get started. Asterisk. Charlie Chaplin story, part 1, A Rough Beginning, friends. Let me take you back to London. April 16th, 1889. That's the day a little boy was born. A boy who would one day make the whole world laugh while quietly hiding his own pain. His name, Charles Spencer Chaplin, but to us, he will always be Charlie Chaplin. Charlie's parents, Hannah and Charles Sr., were stage performers. They sang, acted, and entertained audiences. But life wasn't kind. His father drank too much and eventually abandoned the family, leaving his mother alone with 2 children, Charlie and his half-brother, Sidney. Poverty hit them hard. Some nights, there wasn't even food on the table. Charlie would go to bed hungry, and his mother often pretended she had already eaten, just so her boys could have a little more. They moved from one cheap, dirty room to another, always worried about being thrown out. Still, Charlie was just a child, and children, even in the hardest times, find ways to smile. He loved watching his mother perform on stage. In fact, one night, something incredible happened. Hannah's voice failed during a performance, and the angry crowd began to boo. Suddenly, 5-year-old Charlie walked on stage, took the spotlight, and began to sing and dance. The audience roared with laughter and applause. That was the very first time Charlie performed, and deep inside, he knew, this is what I was born to do. But life had more pain in store. His mother's health declined, and she was eventually sent to a mental hospital. Charlie and Sidney were left alone, poor and abandoned, surviving on the streets of London. Sometimes he begged, sometimes he searched trash bins for food. At just 7 years old, Charlie was sent to a workhouse, a cruel place where poor children were forced to labor. For food and shelter, Dot imagined that a little boy, cold, hungry, separated from his brother, powerless as doctors drag his mother away. Yet even then, Charlie held on to something powerful, a dream. He wanted to perform. He wanted to make people laugh. He wanted to turn all that pain into joy, Dot, and that, my friends, is where his real journey begins. Charlie Chaplin's story. Part 2. First steps toward the spotlight. Charlie didn't have a home. He didn't have parents to care for him. What he did have was determination. As a boy, he did small jobs just to survive, washing dishes, delivering newspapers, even making toys. But no matter what work he did, his heart was always somewhere else, on the stage. One day, Charlie saw a group of street performers entertaining people. They danced, joked, acted, and the crowd loved them. Something clicked inside him. This is it, he thought. This is my chance, Dot, so he joined them. At first, people barely noticed. He sang, danced, tried to be funny, and most just walked past. But Charlie didn't give up. He studied other comedians, copied their expressions, practiced their timing, and slowly developed his own style. Soon, people began to stop and watch. They laughed. They clapped. For the first time in his life, Charlie felt he had the power to make people happy. By the time he was 14, his persistence paid off. He got a spot with a theater group called the 8 Lancashire Lads. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Charlie worked harder than anyone. He memorized every move, every trick, and practiced day and night until his talent began to shine. Then came his first big break. At just 16 years old, he landed a role in the play Sherlock Holmes. Now, he wasn't just a street performer. He was acting in real theaters in front of real audiences. And people loved him. Directors noticed that he had something rare, the ability to make people feel emotions without even saying a word. But Charlie's destiny wasn't in London. Soon, opportunity knocked from across the ocean. Hollywood. 1910. He was invited to join Fred Carnot's comedy troupe, which toured the United States. For a poor boy from London, this was unbelievable. America was the land of dreams, and Charlie knew This was his chance to become a star, and so with nothing but courage and hope, he stepped onto a ship and crossed the Atlantic. He didn't know it yet, but the world was about to meet a character who would change cinema forever. Charlie Chaplin's story. Part 3. The birth of a legend when Charlie arrived in America. Everything felt new. The streets were bigger, the lights brighter, and the energy of Hollywood was like nothing he had ever seen. Deep inside, he knew, this is where I belonged in 1913. Keystone Studios gave him a small role in a silent film. It wasn't much, but Charlie saw an opportunity. He wanted to give the world something unforgettable. So he created a character, a funny little man in baggy clothes, a tight coat, a bowler hat, a cane, and, of course, the tiny mustache. Most importantly, he had that wobbly, unforgettable walk. That character was the Tramp. At first, people didn't know what to make of him. But when Charlie performed, when he moved, when he made people laugh without speaking a single word, the world fell in love. Audiences everywhere were charmed by this little tramp who could make them laugh and cry at the same time. Within just a few years, Charlie wasn't just another actor. He was the most famous man on earth. By 1917, crowds lined up for hours to watch his films. His face was everywhere. Posters, magazines, newspapers. From London to New York, Paris to Tokyo, people knew Charlie Chaplin. He wasn't just a star. He was a phenomenon. But behind the fame, Charlie never forgot the hungry little boy who once searched garbage bins for food. That boy still lived inside him, reminding him never to give up no matter how big the stage got. And as his fame grew, so did his ambition. Acting wasn't enough anymore. He wanted to control the stories, the emotions, the music, everything. He wanted to make movies his way, even if it meant fighting the Hollywood system. And soon, he did exactly that. Charlie Chaplin story. Part 4. A dream of his own by the late 1910s. Charlie was already the most famous actor in the world. But he wasn't satisfied. Hollywood at that time was controlled by powerful studios that dictated what actors could and couldn't do. Most stars had no creative freedom. Charlie wasn't like most stars. He said, "No one will control me. In 1980, make my own movies." He shocked the entire film industry. Charlie Chaplin built his very own studio, Chaplin Studios. For the first time, he was his own boss. He could write, direct, act, and compose without anyone telling him what to do. Then came the film that changed everything. The Kid, 1921. This wasn't just another comedy. It was deeply personal. A story about a poor man and an orphaned boy, inspired by Charlie's own struggles as a child. The movie made people laugh, but it also made them cry. It touched hearts all over the world, proving that films weren't just entertainment. They could be powerful, emotional, and life-changing. Audiences loved it. Critics praised it, and Charlie became even bigger. At a time when most actors earned $10 a week, he was earning $1 million for a single movie. He wasn't just the richest actor in Hollywood. He was the most influential. But despite the money and fame, Charlie remained a perfectionist. He could spend months, sometimes years, working on a single film. Every tiny movement, every joke, every detail had to be flawless. To him, movies weren't just films. They were history. And soon Charlie would prove that even when the world of cinema was changing, he could still stand tall and silence everyone who doubted him. Charlie Chaplin's story. Part 5. Silence speaks louder than words by the late 1920s. Hollywood was changing. A new invention had arrived. Movies with sound. For the first time, actors could speak on screen. Silent films, people said, were finished. Everyone expected Charlie Chaplin to follow the trend. Start making talking films, they told him. But Charlie shook his head. He believed that true emotions didn't need words. A look, a gesture, a tear, those could speak louder than any line of dialogue. And so, in 1931, when the world thought silent films were dead, Charlie released City Lights. It was a masterpiece. A simple story of his Tramp character falling in love with a blind girl. No talking, no sound effects, just music, emotion, and expression. But when people watched it, they laughed, they cried, they felt every beat of the story. The final scene where the blind girl touches Charlie's hand and realizes who he really is still considered one of the greatest moments in film history. Audiences left theaters with tears in their eyes. Charlie had done the impossible. At a time when everyone said silent films had no future, he created one of the most powerful movies ever made. City Lights wasn't just proof of his genius. It was proof of his courage. He reminded the world that cinema wasn't about technology or trends. It was about humanity, about emotions, about making people feel something real. And once again, Charlie stood alone, not just as a comedian, but as an artist. Charlie Chaplin Story, Part 6, The Great Dictator by the late 1930s. The world was on edge. Adolf Hitler was rising to power in Germany, spreading hate, fear, and war, and strangely, he had the same little mustache as Charlie Chaplin's Tramp character. People couldn't help but compare the two, but Charlie saw something deeper. He realized he could use comedy not just for laughter, but as a weapon. He could fight back against tyranny in the only way he knew best, through film. And in 1940, he released The Great Dictator. For the first time in his career, Charlie made a full talking movie. But it wasn't just a comedy. It was bold, political, and dangerous. He played both a cruel dictator, a parody of Hitler, and a humble Jewish barber. Through humor, he exposed the madness of fascism and the cruelty of hate. Then came the final scene. Charlie, as the barber mistaken for the dictator, delivers one of the most powerful speeches in film history. He looked into the camera and said, "We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world of kindness, a world of freedom." The world listened. Millions were moved. Even today, decades later, that speech is watched and shared by people all over the globe. But not everyone admired him. Hollywood studios and political groups began to turn against Charlie. They accused him of being too radical, too outspoken. Some even spread lies about him. The man who had once been America's biggest star suddenly found himself under attack. Yet, through it all, Charlie never stopped doing what he believed in. He proved that laughter wasn't just about jokes. It could also be about truth, courage, and standing up for what's right. Charlie Chaplin Story, Part 7, Betrayal and Exile After The Great Dictator. Charlie should have been celebrated as a hero. But instead, America began to turn its back on him. Hollywood executives, politicians, even the press. Many didn't like that he was too powerful, too independent, too outspoken. They started painting him as an enemy. Lies and accusations spread like wildfire. They dug into his personal life, twisted stories, and made him a target dot by 1952. Things had gone too far. Charlie was accused of crimes he never committed, dragged into scandals, and hounded by the government. Finally, when he left the U.S. for a film trip, they made a brutal decision. They banned him from coming back. Just like that. The country he had helped build into a cinema empire shut its doors on him. It was heartbreaking. Imagine, the man who once made America laugh, who brought joy to millions, was now cast out like a stranger. Charlie packed up his life, his family, and moved to Switzerland. There, he lived quietly. No red carpets, no Hollywood lights, just peace, books, and his children. For the first time, he wasn't chasing fame. He was simply a husband, a father, and a man reflecting on his extraordinary journey. But the world hadn't forgotten him. His films still played everywhere. His Tramp character still lived in the hearts of people across every culture. And though America had rejected him, destiny wasn't finished with Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin Story. Part 8. Redemption for 20 long years. Charlie lived far away from Hollywood, in the quiet hills of Switzerland. He wrote Reed and spent his days with his wife Una and their children. Life was peaceful. But deep down, he knew. The wound of being rejected by America had never fully healed. Then. In 1972, something unexpected happened. After 2 decades of silence, Hollywood finally realized its mistake. The Academy decided to honor Charlie Chaplin with an Oscar, not just for one film, but for a lifetime of brilliance. At first, Charlie hesitated. Would they really welcome him back? Would the same people who once pushed him away now stand to applaud him? But he went. And what happened that night was unforgettable. When Charlie walked onto the stage at the Oscars, the entire audience, actors, directors, legends of the industry, stood up. They clapped, they cheered, and they didn't stop. The ovation lasted 12 full minutes, the longest in Academy Awards history. Tears filled Charlie's eyes. After years of betrayal, he finally felt the love and respect he deserved. It was as if the world itself was saying, "We're sorry. Thank you for everything." That moment wasn't just about an award. It was about redemption. It was proof that no matter how many times life turns against you, the truth always finds its way back. Charlie Chaplin, the boy who once begged on the streets of London, was now celebrated as the greatest comedian, the greatest filmmaker, the greatest entertainer of all time. Part 9. Love, Family, and Final Years. Charlie's personal life had always been complicated. He fell in love too quickly, too often, and many of his early marriages ended in heartbreak, scandals, and painful court battles. People even joked, he can make the whole world laugh, but he can't find happiness in love. But everything changed in 1943. Charlie was 54 years old when he met Una O'Neill, just 18 at the time. Many criticized their age gap, but Charlie didn't care. For the first time, he had found something real. Una wasn't just his wife. She became his anchor, his best friend, and his safe place in a world that often turned cruel. She stood by him when Hollywood rejected him. She cared for him when the world attacked him. And together, they built the family Charlie had always dreamed of. They had 8 children, filling his home with laughter, music, and the warmth he had been denied as a child. For 25 years, Charlie lived peacefully in a beautiful house in Switzerland. He spent his days writing, reading, walking through his garden, and playing with his kids. Sometimes he would watch his old films and smile at the little tramp who had changed his life. Then, on December 25th, 1977, Christmas Day, the world received sad news. Charlie Chaplin had passed away in his sleep. He was 88 years old. The man who had given laughter to billions was gone. Newspapers around the globe carried the same message. The world has lost its greatest comedian. People wept, countries mourned, and tributes poured in from every corner of the earth. But even after death, Charlie's story took one more strange turn. Charlie Chaplin's story, Part 10, The Stolen Body and Eternal Legacy. 3 months after Charlie's death, something shocking happened. One night, a group of thieves broke into his grave in Switzerland. They dug up his coffin and stole his body. Yes, even in death. Charlie's story was extraordinary. The thieves demanded $600,000 from Una, his wife, but she refused. She said Charlie would have laughed at this. For weeks, the world was stunned. Where was Charlie? Chaplin's body? Headlines screamed, police searched, and fans everywhere prayed for answers. Finally, after a massive investigation, the criminals, 2 poor men from Eastern Europe, were caught. Charlie's body was recovered and reburied, this time under a heavy layer of concrete, so no one could ever steal him again. And maybe that's fitting. Because Charlie was never meant to be taken away, he belonged to the world, in every smile, in every laugh, in every tear that his films still bring. Even today, decades later, Charlie Chaplin is more than just a name. He's an emotion. A reminder that no matter how hard life gets, no matter how poor or broken you feel, laughter can heal, dreams can lift you, and perseverance can turn pain into greatness. Charlie once said, "A day without laughter is a day wasted." And that's his true legacy. Every time someone laughs at a comedy, every time a filmmaker tells a story from the heart, Every time a child dreams of turning struggle into art, Charlie is alive. He was the poor boy from London who had nothing, and yet gave the world everything. His story is not just history, it's inspiration. Charlie Chaplin will never be forgotten.